Welcome back to Movies Outpost. Today we'll be diving into yet another movie franchise recap. This movie franchise will consist of the duology One Shot as well as One More Shot. Without further ado, make sure to sit back, relax, and enjoy this action-packed recap. The first movie opens up when Zoe Anderson, a CIA analyst and profiler, is tasked with transferring a prisoner from a CIA black site prison to Washington. Escorting her to the remote island prison is a Navy SEAL squad led by Lieutenant Jake Harris. All Zoe can reveal for now is that Amin is a person of interest in a time-sensitive matter, implying that they needed to be out of the prison with him as soon as possible. Upon landing, Zoe and Jake meet Deputy Site Manager Tom Shields, who informs them that this is the last of such prisons holding foreign insurgents and extremists. He adds that Amin arrived 10 days ago after being caught trying to flee with a blacklisted passport. Unprepared for the sudden transfer of a detainee and the arrival of a SEAL team, Tom warns Zoe that Site Manager Jack York won't appreciate her presence. As predicted, Jack bristles at the rushed operation, and despite being presented with the relevant paperwork stating Amin's link to a known terrorist financier, Jack insists on vetting Amin before allowing his transfer. While Jack makes his calls, Tom escorts Jake and Zoe to meet the prisoner they are looking for. Informing them about the pressure Jack has been facing, considering they are to be shut down soon, Tom says that Jack has headed the place since it opened. Arriving at the cells, Tom then informs Zoe that the prisoner she is interested in has been subjected to a long period of torture in an attempt to extract information just before revealing a tied-up Amin. Demanding him to be untied, Zoe offers Amin some water while assuring him that she did not mean any harm. When Amin claims that he is a harmless businessman and asks for a lawyer, he is told that his British citizenship has been revoked. Hearing this news, he lunges at Zoe and Jake immediately pulls her out of harm's way. Outside, she expresses her disagreement with torture methods to coax information and insists that they needed to get Amin out of there if they were to stop another attack from happening on U.S. soil. Once Tom leaves to check the transfer progress, Zoe meets Amin again, leaving Jake and his team on guard. While Ash maintains that Amin possibly knows nothing, Jake reminds his team that their work is only to safely escort Zoe and Amin out of there. Just then, a supply truck at the prison's entrance grabs their attention. When it forces its way in, the prison's guards approach to check, only to see that a team of insurgents have descended upon the prison. They randomly open fire to take down several guards and even toss some grenades to further reduce their opposition. While Jake and his team return fire, he insists that they should focus on their mission. While they stick to defending themselves, the team takes down several insurgents. Spotting Zoe with Amin, Jake then instructs his team to retreat and begin their extraction procedure. Asking her to stay close, Jake gets her and Amin to head to the helicopter with him, only for it to be blown up. While they quickly take cover, Jake's team continues to return the insurgent fire. Meanwhile, Hakim, the head of the insurgents, instructs his team to free the prisoners and hand them weapons so they can fight on their side. On the other hand, Jake gets his team to retreat just as Ash is shot. Getting him to safety, Jake gets Zoe on the move with Amin. With Dietler carrying the injured Ash, the group cautiously follows Jake into the office building of the prison. While taking down any insurgents he comes across, Jake finally finds Tom. They then follow him to the control room where Dietler tends to Ash's wound and stops the bleeding. Hearing his wheezing breath, Jake realizes that Ash must have punctured his lung. While Whit keeps guard, Jake gets Ash to calm down in the last few moments before he breathes his last. Shifting him to an adjoining room, Jake takes control of the situation and instructs Whit to barricade the corridor outside. Meanwhile, Tom realizes that the radio is jammed and that they have no cell reception either. When he mentions that Jack's office has a satellite phone they could use, Zoe spots the other detainees of the prison being freed in the CCTV footage and recognizes Hakim as the mercenary for hire he is. She informs Tom and Jake that CIA intelligence believed him to have died in an airstrike 9 months ago. Zoe then reveals that they found manifests for shipping containers connected to Amin's company when a known terrorist financier was killed a couple of weeks ago. Since Amin deals with the export of medical equipment like CAT scanners, Amin says that everything he exports is FDA regulated. Nonetheless, Zoe continues to say that the CIA received intelligence about a bomb being built in Europe using radioactive materials from medical scanners, but the trail went cold and Amin has the information they need. When she says that she has done his psych evaluation herself, he chooses to believe her, which enrages Tom. Zoe then transfers her bulletproof vest to Amin, insisting that they need him alive more than her. Now begins the fun. The team joins Whit and Dietler outside to support them in taking down the members of the insurgents that keep getting there. They take down even the prisoners sent in by the insurgents, and gradually the corridor is blocked by corpses. When Dietler is shot, Jake realizes with relief that the bullet only grazed his head. A grenade forces them to move their base closer to the control room where the three continue to defend. When Whit mentions running low on ammunition, Tom threatens to give Amin up to the insurgents to stop the battle. Zoe stands in his way, but Tom suggests to Jake that they take Amin down together and throw him out in the hopes that the insurgents will then leave them alone. The discussion heats up with Jake mentioning his order to extract Amin alive, and Tom aims his gun at Amin, leading to Zoe pointing her gun at Tom instead. Stressed by the situation, Amin spills the truth about his 5-year-old son being killed in an American drone strike. He continues to say that he was directed to help a few radicals soon after and that his grief and anger made him agree to launder their money. While he insists this is the extent of his involvement, Jack calls them on the intercom to inform them that the satellite phone is busted and suggests recalibrating the radio just before the intercom gives way as well. Tom directs Jake to the destination for the recalibration, and just before he leaves through a vent in the control room, Zoe insists that her belief about Amin isn't just a hunch. Crossing the vent takes Jake outside, where he hears Hakeem's approach and hides to witness the execution of a couple of prison guards. A female staff of the prison is then presented to Hakeem. The woman admits to knowing about Amin since she works on detainee processing. Promising not to kill her if she answered his questions, Hakeem asks more about Amin. Terrified for her life, she honestly informs him that a SEAL team had arrived that morning to get him and that the paperwork mentioned that he would be taken to Washington. Satisfied with her answers, Hakeem then lets one of his men, Delcor, shoot her since he had promised not to do it himself. When he gets a couple of his team members to find Amin, Jake discreetly follows one of them and stabs him before moving ahead. To maintain silence about his presence, Jake prefers to use his knife instead of the gun and successfully takes down some more insurgents before cautiously making his way ahead. A couple of prisoners attempt to put up a fight, but he and his trusted knife easily take them down as well. Jake eventually reaches the radio and contacts his team for Tom's help. However, he is discovered by one of the insurgents who strongly pins him to the wall. Fortunately, Jake's opponent is taken down by a well-placed shot from Jack, who immediately gets to recalibrating the radio while Jake confirms that the insurgents want Amin. Finally getting through on the radio, Jack asks for air support, and Jake sets off to lead the remaining insurgents away. Outside, he opens fire and cleverly gets the enemies on his trail. They spend some time carrying out a futile search for him around the area, when Hakeem realizes that Amin must be with the SEALs in the control room. Calling for a young team member, Adamat, he gets him to prove his worth and reminds him of the reward that awaits him. Cheers ring out in Adamat's name as he is fitted with something quite sinister. With the kill switch in place, the bomb is activated even as a terrified Adamat breaks down in tears, while Hakeem insists that there isn't anything to fear. Following Adamat to the control room, Hakeem engages a grenade, allowing his team to progress ahead. Switching to his last magazine, Dietler wonders how long they can keep up when Jake reaches the control room through the vent. Having used the vent to get there earlier, Jack informs him about air support being 30 minutes away. When Jack mirrors Tom and suggests taking Amin down, Zoe is left to defend him yet again. The group is divided, with Jack and Tom insisting on using torture tactics to get the bomb's location from Amin, while Zoe insists that she needs to get him to Washington before it is too late. Gunshots in the corridor just then get Jake and Jack to focus on defending their position till they can be rescued. Despite their dwindling ammunition, the SEALs counterattack strongly till Dietler is struck again. While tending to him, Whit gets shot as well, and both of them soon breathe their last. Jake and Jack retreat just as Adamat lets the bomb go off. Gaining consciousness a while later, Jake finds himself in the debris of the aftermath and looks around to find a passed-out Jack. Pinned down by a stray piece of wood, Zoe is passed out and so is Tom. Meanwhile, Amin gains consciousness and frees himself after spotting a pair of scissors. Jake tries to stop him from going through the vent to escape, but Amin decides to take his chances with the mercenaries instead. Just then, Zoe gains consciousness and Jake crawls over to her as she gurgles in pain and informs him about Amin's wife being pregnant with their son. Adding that she is in the blast zone at Washington, Zoe insists that Jake has to get Amin to reveal the bomb's location before breathing her last. Hearing movement in the corridor outside, Jake moves away from Zoe even as Hakeem leads his team in. Enraged when he does not find Amin, Hakeem gets his team to go through the vent to look for him. Gaining consciousness just then, Tom is asked what Amin revealed. Replying that he told them everything, Tom is shot by a furious Hakeem. Leaving the control room, Hakeem is thoroughly unimpressed with the progress of their task when Delcor reminds him of the higher payments they will receive later. Hakeem then gets several of his men to be vigilant around the docks to spot Amin, who smartly feigned being a corpse amongst a bunch of other prisoners. Once an unaware Hakeem passes by him, Amin cautiously hides and pulls off clothes from another corpse. Not looking like a prisoner anymore, he openly moves around with nobody paying him any attention since they do not know how he looks. However, Delcor soon stops him before realizing that he has indeed caught the person they were there for. Amin continues to insist that he didn't say anything even as he is led into one of the cells. While Delcor waits for Hakeem, Jake arrives and a seemingly well-matched fight breaks out with both of them doling out kicks and punches. Delcor eventually wraps a chain around Jake's neck to overpower him, but Jake shoots him in his foot to get him off and then shoots again to finish him even as a shocked Amin watches. Grabbing Delcor's weapon and Amin, Jake sets off outside and faces an insurgent attack yet again. Spotting his chance, Amin runs off on his own and Jake follows him while dealing with the constant shots made at him. Cautiously making his way through the yard, he looks for Amin while taking down any insurgents he comes across and eventually gets shot himself. Determined, he continues attacking while moving from cover to cover before being shot again. Ignoring his pain, he keeps looking for Amin even as the infinite-seeming insurgent team continues attacking. Having hidden in one of the tents, Amin gets out only to face Hakim's gun. While he insists that he hasn't done or said anything, Hakim ruthlessly shoots him. Getting there just then, Jake finally faces his adversary. Already frustrated about the SEAL team's interference, Hakim angrily attacks Jake, who readily counters every blow. Neither can overpower the other as they continue fighting, and in the absence of a weapon, Hakim pulls Jake towards an abandoned knife in the ground. Jake blocks Hakim's stabbing attempt while they roll towards Amin. Saved by Zoe's bulletproof vest, Amin grabs a gun and runs even as Jake still tries to save himself from being stabbed. Finally able to grab the knife for himself, Jake pierces it through Hakim and kills him. Quickly recovering from the ordeal, he spots Amin at the prison's gate and asks him to talk. Abandoning his weapon, Jake informs Amin about his wife's pregnancy and states that he can save her and their unborn son if he reveals the bomb's location. A tortured and seemingly helpless Amin cries out that it is already too late when suddenly Jack gets there with the intention to take Amin down. Jake is caught between Amin and Jack, both holding up their guns when Amin insists that his wife is neither pregnant nor is she in Washington. Insisting that she is, Jake decides to take on Jack to disarm him just in time for the arrival of the air support they had been waiting for. Jake insists that he is Amin's only chance of seeing his wife again, and urges him to get to Washington with him. Not knowing what to believe, Amin decides to put his trust in Jake, and the two head over to the waiting helicopter while an injured Jack decides to wait to be rescued and watches them leave. In a race against time, a Homeland Security team led by Special Agent Jennifer Lomax scrambles to find a dirty bomb at the docks only to discover an empty container. CIA's Mike Marshall shows the footage of this mission to the person in his custody, Amin's pregnant wife Nisha. Mentioning that the presidential address 2 hours later is the target of the bomb, Marshall asks her what she knows of Amin's involvement in the matter. Clarifying that they have been estranged since Amin took off with their savings 4 months ago, Nisha recognizes that Marshall has left her no option but to coax the information of the bomb's location from her husband. Once they park at Baltimore Airport, Marshall meets Lomax and learns that the destination of Amin's arrival was changed because of security concerns. Already at the end of his wits with the situation, Marshall then tells Nisha that before Amin is taken away for investigation, she will be given some time to speak with her husband. Jake soon escorts a tense-looking Amin into the terminal where he gets emotional when Nisha confirms her pregnancy. Speaking to Jake meanwhile, Marshall blames him for the botched mission at the prison and Zoe's demise. At this accusation, Jake insists that the insurgent attack at the prison was certainly not a random coincidence. Instructing Hooper to get Amin into questioning, Marshall then informs Jake about reporting to his superior, Admiral Mulholland. Simmering over his curt dismissal, Jake is escorted out to the general terminal where he places a call to his wife. He informs her that he is okay but mentions how his entire crew was butchered and killed. His wife cries at the thought as she knew his entire team. He says that he should be home quite soon just as a few men walk past with a serious look in their eyes. Jake decides to follow them and ends the call with his wife. However, his snooping was a very good hunch, as he soon overhears a conversation about needing to nab Amin alive. Grabbing his opportunity, Jake launches an attack before running towards Amin, Lomax, and Hooper. He then proceeds to lead the group out where they are immediately under attack. Separated from his wife, Amin carelessly reaches out to her, during which Lomax gets shot. Grabbing Amin, Jake gets him in the car with Nisha, and Hooper joins the group before they get going. Their hasty escape is soon blocked by the mercenaries with a net on the road. Jake is then forced to get out of the van and clear the obstacle in their path. But problematically, Hooper is shot in the process. They get on the move with an injured Hooper while Nisha offers to help as she is a doctor. Unable to find an exit wound, she tends to Hooper while Jake instructs their driver Stanwood to head back to the terminal. Without access to proper medical care, Hooper passes even as their vehicle is surrounded by mercenaries at the terminal. Under heavy mercenary fire, Stanwood tries to drive them away only to crash into a barricade. Exiting the vehicle with Nisha and Amin, Jake helps them seek shelter in the nearest building. Desperately trying to find their way back to the terminal, the group learns that they are on their own since their calls are jammed. Putting together pieces of the puzzle, Jake realizes that Amin is extremely crucial, what with military-grade communications jamming and the mercenary force. Hiding Amin and Nisha, Jake proceeds to discreetly take down a mercenary. Meanwhile, desperate and scared for his wife's life, Amin leads Nisha out of their hiding place only to be spotted soon after. Fortunately, Jake intervenes before they are captured and eliminates the threat. He then proceeds to corner Amin to demand the bomb's location, but to no avail. In an attempt to gain his trust, Jake uncuffs Amin and even gets him and Nisha tactical vests from previously incapacitated mercenaries. However, when Jake heads off to face the remaining mercenaries on their floor, Amin secretly pockets a gun as well. While Jake carefully guides them to the upper floor, the mercenaries continue their search. Frustrated at the progress of their mission, Dunbar and Campbell discuss needing a code for their package before it is too late. They meet Jackson upstairs just as he learns that they now have access to the airport's CCTV footage. Relieved that their operation will now be unseen, Jackson proceeds to speak to the airport's COO, Ward, about accessing the cargo terminal. He spots Amin on one of the camera recordings, and Ward offers to lead them to the correct stairwell. With barely 90 minutes for the presidential address, Jackson instructs Campbell to join Dunbar with Ward to nab Amin. However, Ward leads them astray, claiming to be confused about the multiple stairwells in the terminal. As it turns out though, Ward's first choice was the right one, which is where Jake still hides with Amin and Nisha. Persuaded by his wife, Amin finally confesses about the shipping container being a decoy. Insisting that he doesn't know the mercenaries or their objective, he adds that he wasn't able to inform his handler about the changed delivery method before his arrest. When Jake insists on his handler's name, Amin mentions knowing the person only by their voice. Leading them out of the stairwell, Jake avoids being spotted by Dunbar or Campbell, who are still trying to spot the right stairwell. While Ward mentions that he recently took up his job and hence was still learning the layout, Jake silently takes down a mercenary in their path. Frustrated by Ward's inability to guide them correctly, Campbell shoots him. The sudden gunshot startles Nisha, which gives away their position even as Campbell and Dunbar spot them attempting to run to safety. While Jake takes on the mercenaries following them, Amin leads Nisha away from the chaos. Jake soon joins them and continues to exchange fire with the mercenaries. Coming upon a locked door, Amin uses the gun he grabbed to blow its lock off and goes through it with his wife even as Jake runs back to find the mercenaries on their trail. Reuniting with Amin, Jake's life is saved when Amin takes down a mercenary who had followed close behind. Finally, within reach of Marshall's team, the group finds some respite. Speaking to Amin then, Jake guarantees to save Nisha's life if Amin reveals the bomb's location. Still choosing to keep his secret, Amin watches as Nisha ignores her own pain and fatigue to tend to the injured agents, including Lomax. His pride at his wife's ability to save lives battles with the shock of having shot a person when Nisha reminds him that he saved Jake's life in the process. Since he isn't the terrorist everyone believes him to be, she urges him to prove himself to Jake. Meanwhile, Jake speaks to Lomax about the mercenaries belonging to a private military company owned by a former Navy SEAL. Hearing that this company would easily have intelligence links, Lomax hints at Marshall's absence at the prison as being suspicious. Jake replies that Zoe had said something about a delayed flight, which resulted in her joining the mission in his stead, but also realizes the possibility of foul play in case Marshall stayed away on purpose. Alarmed when she sees Marshall showing Amin the mission footage from the docks, Lomax is called out on the unauthorized raid. Replying to Marshall's accusation, she says that as they were working on raw intel, they did not have the luxury of time to plot their next steps. However, pointing out that she released the mission's footage only after it was a bust, Marshall doubts her intentions and compels her to surrender her weapon. Marshall's suspicions are emphasized when Amin recognizes her voice while she speaks in Arabic in the mission footage. She tries to defend herself by saying she knows the language as part of her training, but Amin is sure of Lomax being his handler. He says that she deliberately diverted his plane to Baltimore, since she knows this is where he shipped the bomb. Jake and Marshall barely come to terms with the fact that the bomb is at the airport when chaos erupts with the arrival of the mercenaries. Marshall and his team return the mercenary fire along with Jake while Amin stays down and gets to Nisha. The two then attempt to escape only to be blocked by more mercenaries. While Nisha manages to get away, Dunbar and Campbell catch hold of Amin. Jake miraculously gets there and tackles Dunbar while Campbell holds Amin at gunpoint. Jake's intense fight with Dunbar ends with Jake flung off the railing to the floor below. After blowing the brains out of a flight attendant trying to make a difference, the mercenaries bring Marshall over to Dunbar. When he accuses Dunbar of betraying their country, he is ruthlessly shot in the head by Lomax, thereby proving Amin's doubts right. Speaking to Amin, Lomax then lets him know that they found out about the shipment sent to Baltimore, but needed him to know the serial number of the cargo crate to find it on time. With the presidential address in about an hour, she says that protocol in the case of a radioactive security threat dictates that all key personnel be transferred to a single secure location. Gathering everyone in one place gives Lomax the opportunity to get their biometric data, which unlocks several of the country's strategic defense strategies. She recognizes the worth of this information for the right foreign buyer and hence needs her plan to be executed perfectly. Realizing that he was used to make the threat of terror seem credible, Amin refuses to give her the serial number she needs and Lomax ruthlessly shoots him in the leg. She stabs his thigh a couple of times, but he continues to stay silent. Deciding to torture him even more, Lomax then instructs Dunbar to get Amin's wife in the scene to force his cooperation. Relaying the information to Campbell, Dunbar takes off to regroup with Jackson, leaving Campbell to get another guy to help with locating Nisha. They split up soon to cover more ground, which is when Jake rejoins the game. Silently following Campbell's colleague while he looks through multiple doors, Jake makes his presence known to attack him. His SEAL training allows him to quite easily overpower the guy even as he hears Nisha being caught by Campbell. As he comes over to check on his colleague, Jake hides, spotting trouble. Campbell is startled when Jake suddenly attacks him. Both sides fight tooth and nail, with neither willing to give up until Nisha threatens to use Campbell's weapon. Jake vents out his frustration at the entire scenario on Campbell, and it is Nisha who eventually gets him to stop. Quickly putting together a plan, Jake then pulls on a mask and a cap to disguise himself as one of the mercenaries and convinces Nisha to go along with him to Lomax and Amin to save countless innocent people from meeting their ends. Once they reach Lomax, she borrows Jake's weapon and gets him to remove Nisha's tactical vest. With Nisha held at gunpoint, Lomax asks Amin for the serial number yet again. With Amin and Nisha both traumatized by the situation, Lomax instructs Jake to strike Nisha in her stomach. While Jake hesitates to follow the order, Amin is threatened by the prospect of losing another child and hence gives away the number Lomax wants. She gets one of her men to pass the information on to Jackson and then proceeds to untie Amin before handing over a speech she prepared for him. Amin then reluctantly reads the words Lomax crafted for him as she records him. However, he isn't able to read much past his introduction and stating that he was in the American capital for vengeance, instigating him with memories of his son who passed in an American airstrike. Lomax threatens to shoot Nisha to get Amin back on track. This time he reads threateningly enough to match the content of the speech detailing how America would now suffer war and destruction. Satisfied with his work, Lomax shoots Amin and instructs his men to finish Nisha as well. Once she leaves, Jake attacks the remaining mercenaries and brutally stabs one while Nisha tries to stop Amin's bleeding. Profusely apologizing to his wife, Amin urges her not to let their son watch the video with his last breath. Leaving Nisha behind, Jake sets off in an attempt to stop the chaos Lomax's madness has brought about. He cautiously makes his way through the airport and gets on the train to the cargo terminal with a few other mercenaries. However, Dunbar realizes that he isn't part of the team and a fight breaks out. After taking down the others, Jake faces Dunbar in an intense fight. As the train hurtles on its way to the cargo terminal, the two collide against each other in a desperate frenzy to gain control of the situation. Jake eventually knocks Dunbar out long enough to stop the train and escape before more mercenaries join the chase. In pursuit of Jake, Dunbar and his teammates follow an adjacent track into a dark under-construction area. When they find an injured team member after a while, they realize that Jake is certainly somewhere around. Dunbar's team mysteriously keeps losing members, causing him to close in on Jake. However, Jake runs out of ammunition when he faces Dunbar and proceeds to knock his weapon out before engaging in a primal struggle yet again. Both of them land punches and kicks with clinical accuracy, until Jake pushes Dunbar onto a metal construction bar, thereby putting an end to their fight. Heavily injured himself, Jake proceeds ahead and arms himself on his way out. He eventually comes across Jackson making his way through after having found the right container. Reaching Lomax on the tarmac, they check the radiation levels of the container to be above the normal range. She instructs her men to transfer the cargo into an ambulance and gets the pilot to prepare to leave. Further, she then gets a couple of the communication jammers offline to call in their progress, unknown to the fact that Jake has been silently tracking them. As soon as he is able to use his phone, he calls in Lomax's rogue operation to his superior, Admiral Mulholland. Meanwhile, Lomax oversees the connection of the device to a cell phone and calls in the success of their mission as Jackson prepares to drive away with it. However, Jake attacks before he can leave and takes out the ambulance's tires. The few remaining mercenaries attempt to put up a fight, but he easily takes them out. He keeps moving ahead to find Lomax and Jackson just when she shoots at him. Pursuing her, Jake is met with Jackson and his brutal blows instead. Unwilling to give up this close to the end, Jake is running purely on adrenaline during his counterattack. Just as it seems like he is overpowered by Jackson, Jake cuffs him to render him immobile. Grabbing a gun, he is about to shoot Jackson when he hears the sound of a plane starting up. Making his way over, he shoots the pilot before proceeding to search the plane for Lomax. Jake notices the approaching police even as he spots Lomax and learns that Capitol Hill has been evacuated and that her mission is ready to be executed. She tells Jake that the bomb is only the beginning just as FBI agent Long arrives with the SWAT team. Once Lomax is arrested and taken away, Agent Long informs Jake about Mulholland needing a full debrief as soon as possible. Spotting Lomax's phone, Jake deletes the video she recorded of Amin in his attempt to save the dignity of a man assumed to be a terrorist. Thanks for sticking until the end. If you enjoyed this movie franchise recap, make sure to hit the like button and leave a comment to support the channel. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.